good.
You just don't have like an official intro, right? Like
No, we kind of just jump right into it.
Yeah. So recently I was, I don't know, the Holy Spirit was kind of putting on my heart some things that I had been struggling with. And he put it on my heart, I think, to look into Romans 7. And I'm not going to go into tonight pretty much everything that I learned. Really not so much learned, but I had to relearn, if that makes sense. Like stuff I already knew, but needed to be reminded of. And that was good. And since that has happened, I haven't had any sort of difficulties. So I give all credit and praise to God there. Well, yeah, I don't want to talk about necessarily all of that tonight.
Okay.
It was something that when I was reading it initially, I had really been struggling and I wasn't in the right headspace. So when I read it, it confused me. And then I went back and read it the next day with a much clearer mind. And I was like, oh, okay, this makes perfect sense. But in the event that anybody's kind of like unsure of...
Yeah.
Listen, it is 9:11.
It's not that late.
That is late.
No. Keep going.
I've been up since 6:30. Leave me alone.
So have I.
Yeah, so leave me alone. But I thought it might be helpful to kind of go over it in the event that anyone else is kind of struggling like I was. Because I think for a lay person, this could kind of get confusing. Right? Because Romans 7 for itself is somewhat of an odd chapter in that you are going to read the word do more times than you thought possible, and yet it will make grammatical sense somehow. Right? Like when Peter writes in his second epistle that some of Paul's teachings are difficult to understand, I think that's what he had in mind. Like he looked at Romans 7 and went, I know what he's saying, but it's awful to try and read, right? Like if you've ever tried to read Romans 7 out loud, you do not have a fun time.
Is that including the Greek?
I would imagine so, yeah. I didn't actually look at the Greek for this. I stuck to the English because my head was hurting enough the first night. And obviously, probably the second night I could have looked at the Greek, but I didn't think of that. Maybe like just to give you an example, we know that the law is spiritual. This is verses 14 and 15. We know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. I do not understand what I do, for I do not for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. That is the word do 4 times in one sentence. Now, it does make grammatical sense, but that is the word do 4 times in one sentence. So I like to think when Peter says that the teachings are hard to understand, he's like, yeah, I just watched him use the word do 4 times in one sentence. And I kind of want to smack him.
You know what's funny is all the do's are looped into a different word. That's not do.
Really?
Yeah, it's like the first do.
Oh, God? Is it God?
So
No.
for we know that the spiritual, but the fleshly. So just,
That would be 4.
for what I am, verse 15, right? For what
Yes.
I am doing. Okay, so that's your first one. So that's katargazomai.
Okay.
Then
Well
you have
done, by the way, on
thank
that.
you. Then you have the noosko, is I do not understand. So it's referring to understanding.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Then you have I want to do is thelo or thelu, and then prasso, and then the last one is
pollo.
Yeah, but it's like they're all like connected to another word. They're all connected to a different word.
All different words.
And so like one of them is like connected to the ability to understand.
Exactly. All in the dative though, which is interesting. So it'd be like a with an idea, or like a positional sort of idea.
Well, there's where was it? I had to find this commentary. There's one verse in here that people translate one way, and there's one who said it'd be better translated as through. For this one where I can't remember which word it is. I'll look it up real quick though.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So all of those are in the dative except for See, you did it better than I did. Katargazomai. No, katargazomai. Katargazomai. Which is, curiously, if I had to, based off the ending, guess, I'd say it's a nominative plural.
Oh, sorry, which one?
Katargazomai.
That is, for what I am...
Could be accusative.
That is verb present, either middle or passive, indicative, first person singular.
That did not tell me what case.
I'm just telling you what he gave me.
Okay, well, respectfully, that was not helpful.
Just telling you what it gave me. That's all it gave me. VPUI1S.
One more time, please.
VPUI1S. Verb present, either middle or passive, indicative, first person singular.
I'll find it. Get away from me.
Let's see. I'm pulling it up. Where's the one I was looking at before? New Testament. Let's go to Romans 7. Let's click on footnotes.
I guess they're going to put indicative as the case, which, I mean, sure, but like even the interlinear I'm looking at doesn't even put indicative.
It says
as the case.
Well, it says
it's the mood, right? Not the case.
Well, it says it's also is passive and middle will not deal with the case, correct? For Greek.
Correct. Yeah, no. The case is the person being looked at.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the object, subject, its owner, or its positional. I'm going to go with nominative for now because it's kind of attached to the ha gar katargazomai. Right. So what that would be you would attach it to the ha, which would be nominative. So we're going to go with nominative for now.
Gotcha.
But I find it interesting that those are all dative. Right? The rest are all dative. Right? Ginesoko, thelo, prasso, and pollo. Which is Spanish for chicken. That's interesting that those are all dative. So those would suggest like some sort of positioning. So let me look at the verse itself. Right, okay, so this makes sense, right? I do not understand. That would make sense, right? He's talking about himself as the subject.
Yes.
So I do not understand what I do. Okay, so now see, I understand why that's all dative, because it's all in relation to him. It's all in position to him and his understanding, right? Mm-hmm. What he does and does not understand. Okay, all right. So that would explain why, at the very least, the case endings, why they're all different words. I'm really not too sure, truthfully.
Because they're all tied to a different word.
Sure. But like, I mean, yeah, right. So you get katargazomai, which is what would be more accurately translated what I am doing. So what I am doing, I do not understand. And so then you get the I understand, which is ginesoko.
Mm-hmm.
That's the second one, and then thelo. I'm gonna guess is tied to thelos. So that's more like a wanting or a desiring for.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't understand. I'm looking. Not for what I desire. This I do, right? So you get the second I do, and that's proso. So I'm curious why proso. Because it's the same thing for, well, maybe the difference is with katargazomai. I'm just now looking at the Greek first time. So
what a rookie! Just kidding.
I will throw my mouse at you. Actually, no, I won't, because I need it.
Yeah, you do. Because your touchpad is broken.
Yeah, I'm still not sure how that happened. I opened the laptop one day and the touchpad was like No.
It sounds like it's just a skill issue.
Oh, you were on one, man. Holy crap. Okay, so from what I can tell, katargazomai is simply being used as the doing. So what I am doing, versus prasso is just being used as I do. But then that poses the question, why is there pollo? Why is there chicken?
With the very last one?
Yeah. Because it's still just I do.
Versus which one you're looking at, in opposition to?
Versus prasso.
Which is?
The second to last one should be.
So the I do not practice? Because that one's, wouldn't that be referencing to practice? So if I were to...
Well, so the exact Greek was like, let me just read through. For what I am doing, not I understand. Right? So what I am doing, I don't understand. For what I do not want, that I do, or this I do, I guess, because it's tuto. So this I do. But what I hate, this I do.
Well, yeah, I mean, because we're talking about like for what I am doing, I do not understand. Because what I want to do, this I do not practice.
Right.
Is how the lexem.
Oh, practice.
Yes. Because prasso in my Greek is tied to practice, collecting, actions.
Interesting.
Doing, accomplishing. And so the lexem does this I do not practice. So like this is not a thing I actively choose to do.
Okay, hang on.
To live by. But what I hate, this I do.
Okay, so let me, because I'm going to look at prasso then and its use, right? So I see 4 uses.
It's used 38 times in the Greek. Do you care about translation?
I do not.
Okay, so if we go with, I'll do one we used to use, the HDSB. In the HDSB, you got 12 times being translated as do, 8 times as done, 8 times as practice, 2 as collect, 2 as did, 1 is harm, 1 is acting, 1 is does, 1 is observe, 1 is news, 1 is mind.
Okay, so yeah, I was looking specifically at just prasso, not all of its different variation, like different conjugations.
Well, I mean,
but that makes more sense, right? So,
and then here, let me pull up a couple lexicons. So if I pull up the BDAG, to bring about or accomplish something through activity. So to do or accomplish.
I mean, that's kind of the definition of do.
To engage in activity or behaviors in a certain way, to experience what is going on, to be situated. If I use another one, that one didn't help me. Pass through, pass over, experience certain fortunes. Let's see about this one over here. In the New Testament, in the distribution of prasso in the New Testament is largely limited to Lucan and Pauline material. Out of nearly 40 total instances, only 2, John 3:20 and 5:29, occur in writings other than Luke's or Paul's. Negative connotation of prasso continuing into New Testament, and they are perhaps even more developed than in secular or Septuagintal Greek.
Is it John 3:29 you said?
3:20 and 5:29.
Okay, 3:20, 5:29.
And I was looking to read about the Septuagint and classical instances in a second too. Luke uses prasso in a neutral sense in his gospel for the collection of taxes or other money. Jesus did nothing worthy of death. A similar point is made concerning Paul in the book of Acts 26:31. There are implied negative connotations in Luke 22:23 concerning what Judas must do. Other negative uses include what the leaders of the people did to Jesus, what the Sanhedrin intended to do to the apostle, and when the Philippians jailer intended to do to himself. Positively, the Gentiles should avoid idol food, sexual immorality, and so forth. If they do, they will do well. There may be some play upon the idea of doing well instead of doing badly, which would have been the case about the Gentiles continuing their customs positively. Paul advised imitation of what he does in terms of lifestyle and conduct. You can also positively refer to Paul's gospel labor. Positive accomplishment can be seen also in Acts 20:20 and 26, but the negative sense overshadows these few. John adopted the negative aspect of prasso and qualified it with phallos, worthless, bad, evil in moral sense. Likewise, Paul affixed a negative value to prasso in a number of cases to practice. The kind of evil conduct explicitly denounced by God's righteous decree was for Paul a grievous sin. Worse still, not only were these things done, they were done with approval. According to Romans 1:32, such willful, blatant rebellion against God can only incur God's wrath and judgment, according to Romans 2:1-4. Those who continually execute the act of sinful nature, sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, and the like, will not inherit the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And that's broadly the New Testament usage.
Yeah. And that's actually kind of what I was looking at, the two passages in John. Holy guacamole. And that seemed to be the indication, right? Because it's Christ talking at each point about the doing of good versus the doing of evil. And like the John 3 passage is, those who do evil hate the light. Right? So that's kind of the idea of this ongoing doing, right? It's not just a one-time instance. And then likewise, the John 5 passage was you should do evil, or you should do good rather than do evil.
What's interesting real quick is in the classical use, extremely complex common verb occurs throughout antiquity in a variety of contexts. In the most fundamental terms, prasso means to do, to practice, to execute. The original sense was to pass over, through, to get beyond. That image, however, which often depicted the movement involved in attaining a goal, gave way to a more concrete image of doing the action self by which the goal was attained. Thus, prasso means to carry out, to do, to practice. So if we took that idea into Paul's, the things that I want to do, I do not carry out. I do not bring to fruition. I do not practice. The things I hate, I do. So it's almost like saying, okay, so, this practice I should be doing, I don't do. But right, however, the practice I do, the practice I do bring about, is what I hate.
See, this is why Greek is just a better language. And we should all speak Greek.
Assuming that I'm understanding the Greek correctly, but it's almost like Paul's saying,
yeah, no, I think
what I want to do is this. I should be practicing it that way. I don't practice it.
Yeah.
The things that I hate, I do, meaning I do practice it this way. Which might be why he uses pollo at the end, because it's a very like somber, like, I do practice this other stuff.
Yeah.
If that's the right way, because also the Bible talks about those who practice things are also like, especially when they're willfully acting, like, no, you're not in, you're not, that's not a thing.
Right. And that's kind of where I had been struggling a little bit. Was what exactly is the Christian's relationship to his sin? I know that's a loaded question and a half.
It's been one I've been thinking about that too.
Okay, well, good.
Different ways, probably, but still.
Well, I really chose. I really kind of chose to focus on the beginning portion of this passage. I'm not doing the rest of.
I think you should. You got to commit to the bit.
You think I should keep going,
commit to the bit,
going on like this for the rest of the
Just
podcast?
make sure we can understand you.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work out, mate.
Too bad.
I'm trying to figure out what exactly this is. It's kind of half British, half Australian.
Especially that alien right there.
Australian? Yeah.
All right, keep going. Where were you? You were saying, okay,
from a land down under.
You're thinking about how, what, you were thinking about the relationship between human and sin?
Yeah,
or
so kind of more focusing on the statement that has always confused a lot of people. And I used to think I had a firm grasp on it, and then I kind of wavered. Do I not? The statement that Paul makes, that it is no longer I who sin, but the sin who lives in me. Right. That statement, I've been asked about that many, 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 many times. And I've always taken this kind of pseudo-spiritual approach to it, by which I mean, like, I essentially was talking about how there's two persons warring inside of the Christian. This is how I used to talk about it. I think I've kind of reformed that view now. But that there's two persons warring inside the Christian for control. and the one is the person of sin, and the one is the person of Christ, I guess. Paul doesn't necessarily say that. He says more so like spiritual, right? As he says in verse 14, we know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, so does the slave to sin, right? So it's this contrast of the one who has the Spirit versus the one who does not. Right? And so I wrote down actually just exactly what I was thinking. So I think that would probably be the most helpful. It's not a very long read. I didn't write down a ton. But I wrote, the believer is no longer the one who does sin because sin yields death, Romans 6:23, and sin itself died, according to 2 Corinthians 5:20-21. To quote the classic hymn, it is well, my sin, oh the bliss of that glorious thought, my sin not in part but the whole is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. So, thus we have been freed from sin through its death, or even being doomed to die, a la Genesis 3, thank you, because you were echoing in my mind at that point, and are being brought to life in Christ and given his righteousness. Likewise, Christians are released from the law, for the law was meant to point out our sin, which we no longer possess. And now that sin has been doomed to die, the law is no longer required as the Spirit guides the believer in all matters, 1 Corinthians 2. We no longer have what telos of the law requires, ergo we are released from the law. Finally, the Sermon on the Mount pokes through where Paul talks about desire. Christ initially talks about the desire to do evil things being linked to sin, though not exclusively. In Matthew 21, 28-32, Christ outlines the complementary mirror of Paul's statement. The son in the parable desires to do evil, yet instead chooses to do good. The other son desires to do good, but does evil instead. It's the flip of what Paul was saying, but it meshes perfectly with it. However, obviously, desire plays some role, James 1, and both the Lord and Paul recognize that action begins with some level of desire. So if the intention is to do good, then you have this dichotomy of self and spirit. Did that make sense? I know I kind of threw a lot at you.
I think so. I'll just backtrack first. For clarity's sake, James 1 has been very helpful for me in this area. Because many people in my life have said this incorrectly. Because James 1 just refutes it. So I'll just read it, starting at verse 13.
Okay, so you had it pulled up already.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No one who is being tempted should say, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted by evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each one is tempted when he is dragged away and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, after it has conceived birth to sin, and sin, when it is brought to completion, gives birth to death. People have frequently treated like every desire is automatically the sin. It's like, no, desire when entertained, conceives sin, which then brings about the action.
Yeah.
Sin is something I've had to rephrase a lot. This is where I kind of reveal more of my background, because I've been keeping it to myself. But I definitely grew up in a more low church Protestant background. And take with that as you will. One of the things I've heard a lot has been sin nature, which I've had to clarify with people what they mean by that, because the more I try to understand Trinity and distinction of nature and person and creation, the more I'm like, we can't say that, guys. I don't think we can say that. Like, what we mean is like, then don't say that. It's like we mean this. It's like, great. Would you say that God is three beings and say that you mean persons? No, that's just wrong.
Say what you mean. Yeah.
You can't say it because you're saying that in order to be human means that you must be sinful. It's like, then what do you do with Jesus?
God. Yeah.
Because now you have two different natures. Now, if you want to say there's a corruption in nature, I don't have a problem with that. Or there's a corruption in the human, I don't have a problem with that. But saying that there is something that's now something that's added to say this is what makes you human. It's like, we have two humans now. I understand what you want to say. It's like Jesus is the new Adam, the new.
And in doing so, of creating those two different natures, you create two persons.
But also,
or a sinful Christ.
Well, because
which is a much bigger problem.
Well, I've also had someone try to argue for a diophysite route of sin, and it's like,
That's not
possible.
Yeah, no, that's not what that is.
It's like, that's not possible. It's like, so here's the other thing too. Natures are created. Natures are also, relatively speaking, tangible.
I would caveat the natures are created. Because obviously the divine nature is not.
I'm speaking, yes.
Sure.
I'm speaking in the created sphere. Natures are created by God. To have a nature then for is a thing, kind of a sort in that sense. To make sin a nature makes sin a created thing,
right?
Which means God created sin. First off, that's a big problem, theologically speaking. Secondly, James makes it very clear: sin is action, sin is choice, sin is something that you do. Your desires can conceive sin, but desires are not automatically sin. And so this is,
and I think I like the way you put it. Where you said that desires, when dwelt on, become sinful, right? Because we could have the discussion of, at what point does something become an action, but there is some sense in which thinking is an action.
Yes.
Right? Thinking is something that you're performing.
Sure, for sure.
And because we have to understand it that way, because Christ teaches as much in Matthew 5, right? Which is why I referenced it.
And so a lot of the earlier church fathers, which a lot of your early church fathers are going to be more towards the Eastern sphere in terms of the rise that we have. When we get later into the centuries, you start to get a lot more of records of the Western thinking. It's just because of the records that we have. And then Nicaea and Constantinople were also held in the East. And then we started traveling more towards Western spheres. And we're now having a balance of literature. So it's going to be a little foreign, but it's because it's in the Eastern sphere of early Christianity when it was birthed. They have this thing they refer to as the passions, which is something that I forgot who wrote it. Oh, I think it's Rowan Williams. He's an Anglican priest and professor. I can't remember which college he teaches. That he wrote an entire short little book that I've really enjoyed, and is something that I'm looking to dive into, because I think I found some passages in the New Testament especially that kind of help unpack this more, but it's definitely more of a church father outline. And the passions, I'm going to butcher this a little bit because it's still brand newer to me. So it's a little foreign. The passions, there's something called blameful and blameless passions.
Okay.
So for instance, it is not, there are passions such as the passion for our desires for sex, for food, to drink water. Those are not bad passions.
Right.
However, there are also passions that can come out of it that do lead to problematic. And so
if you are gluttonous, if you are drunk, if you are sleeping outside of marriage, yes.
So some of the fathers would say that
sleeping with someone outside of marriage, not sleeping outside.
So some of the fathers would say that Jesus had blameless passions, but he didn't have the blameful passions that we have. And the passions
he did in fact eat.
Yes. But the passions, interestingly enough, and this Rowan was saying this in his book, is actually the precursor for the 7 deadly sins that the West develops.
Interesting.
So it's built off of this, and the passions are an 8-tier system instead of 7. And it's less of a list of do nots, and it's more of a progression of this leads to this, which leads to this, and all these other destructive things. I can't remember them all because I guess it's
fair enough.
But the passions themselves are the things that some of them pray that the Father gives them strength to combat against. So they have this idea of kind of apathy, but not in the same way we have. They want to be apathetic in a sense to the passions.
Gotcha.
So pride is a bad passion, is a negative passion. Lust is a negative passion. Now, sexual passions themselves are not bad.
No, I would argue
it's a good thing.
Good things.
Yeah. But there are the passions that are in there. They're destructive. There's two others are I think it was listlessness. I can't. And there's one, I think it's listlessness, where it's kind of this idea where you kind of grown to what I guess the word that they use is whatever about the situation in the world. And so what Rowan does is he actually takes each of the 8 passions and he ties it to, in his mind, which are the 8 Beatitudes. Now, some would say there's 9, depending on how you want to structure it. But he said that each one actually perfectly lines up in some weird way with one of the Beatitudes that Jesus speaks against. So the being poor in spirit is speaking against the passion of the kind of the selflessness and your pride, and the fact that you need to recognize, and your greed, in that you need to recognize that your spirit is completely and totally of his. Your spirit is not able to gather what it needs to live. And then there's also pride and greed. I can pull up a list probably right now if you want.
That's right.
But that idea has been something I've been trying to get into, and it kind of plays into what
really interesting though. Yeah.
Plays a little bit more into what you're talking about. It's actually, I said this in a different podcast we were recording, is one of the things I want to do a Graphai podcast on if I can get enough information, and that's where your Greek side is going to be really helpful.
Okay. Yeah.
If I can get enough data for it. But it's weird. The reason why it's weird is because you have to get into the early, not only Eastern thinking, which is different than Western thinking already. Like in terms of logic, we tend to go very strictly. We do like either or. They have more room for both and. At least in our, you and I do a lot of both and.
Yes.
Because we're also a little more acquainted with some of the Eastern. And we don't really see that has to be either or sometimes. Mm-hmm. But they're very much more open to that. And there's some different thinking there. So that's already a cultural difference. Now you add time to that. So what's interesting is a lot of our modern philosophy is built off Greek thought.
Yes.
But that's also from Eastern thinking.
What have I said? Modern philosophy, 95% of modern philosophy is trying to prove Aristotle wrong and I realized that he was right.
But what's interesting is that we sometimes westernize some of that early philosophy, or we think it's dumb in certain of them because we don't understand the Eastern mindset behind it. And that doesn't mean, therefore, it's automatically right, but it might be there's a slight straw man that even if they're still wrong, we could represent it better.
Yeah.
So that's why it's weird, is because we don't really think of it that way. And we think of the 7 deadly sins is more of a list of don'ts. Mm-hmm. That's not...
Don't be wrathful. Don't be slothful.
Yeah, that's not entirely the way they thought about the passions. That it was a little more nuanced than that. So I can actually look up the list if you want to share more of your thoughts. But the reason I bring those two up is because that kind of played more into my trying to understand Romans 7 better, because we obviously cannot talk about it as if it's a sin nature, because one, God did not create sin. Sin is also an action. It is not a nature. I would agree that there's something corrupted and sick about us. But to say that there's a sin nature runs into problems, especially when people try to argue for a diet. Like I literally just want to say, if we think diaphysically about sin, it's like, no, that's not a thing.
No, you can't have in one instance the person committing an action which is sinful, but the nature doesn't participate. No.
Yeah.
That's not what diaphysitism teaches.
And really, to kind of go a diophysite route is a little bit, I don't want to say it is, because it wouldn't properly represent Augustine's position. But it leans more towards Augustine's position of original guilt, rather than like ancestral sin.
Yeah.
Or like the effects of sin.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think Augustine is advocating the position that people hold today of sin nature necessarily.
No, that's not. If I remember correctly, I don't think it's his. He does believe the original guilt. Right. Like we're guilty of Adam, versus we have the effects of Adam. Like there is a corruption that we do die. We're not in the garden, but we're not guilty because he did. We're guilty because of the choices we make.
Yes.
Augustine has that thought.
Yeah, I don't need Adam's guilt. I got plenty of my own.
Yeah, that is Augustine's thought. But he's also trying to combat very specific Jewish thoughts that I want to give him. I want to be charitable to him, that I think that because of things he was combating against, and as he's trying to figure things out, that there's times where he goes to a certain extreme because in his mind, he's protecting the gospel.
Right.
And therefore, I commend him for that. It's just that you might have gone a little too far in that one direction.
Yeah.
But, so I don't say this to put down Augustine. I still think we've talked before, there's stuff I like that he's written and I find benefit from. But when looking at Romans 7, just kind of considering also with James in mind, Paul sometimes uses the flesh. I had a friend who
Sarcos, yes.
Understandably so, almost went Gnostic with it, and saying that it's the body versus the spirit.
Very Buddhist of him.
Yes, and a little Gnostic. And it's almost like the that's more going towards ontological sin, like in terms of like a sin nature. Like it's like, I don't think you realize you're doing that. It's kind of going that direction. Even if you don't intend it to, or if that's not your final spot, it kind of goes that direction. And it's like, there's times where Paul actually tends to use flesh referring to like earthly and worldly. And the reason he does that is because, remember, he is a Pharisee, and the Old Testament at times refers to the land or the eretz or the ground, not referring to the earth as in creation itself, but it is also the passageway to the realm of the dead. So it's the deathly ways. So it's almost like when he says the ways of the flesh, I mean like the ways of the earthly. It's like he's really saying like it's the ways of death. Yeah. Is really what he's saying. It's not so much like, yeah, your body is a problem, as like the Gnostics did argue. They pull from texts like these to say, look, right here. It's like, no, if you were Jewish for a second, that's not what he means.
Yeah. And to kind of reinforce that, you could go the Colossians 1 and 2 route, which is that God is all good. And Paul very much makes the statement that the fullness of the deity dwells bodily in Christ. Right. So if the flesh is just purely evil, then you have a contradiction there. You have something that is purely good dwelling inside of something that is purely evil. That's a contradiction. You can't have that.
Here are the 8 passions. I was able to find it really quickly.
Okay.
Gluttony.
Yep.
So excessive indulgence in food or drink. Lust or fornication is a craving sexual pleasure in the abusing of it. Avarice. The obsession. Avarice, sorry.
No, you're good.
I put the emphasis in the wrong spot. I put the emphasis.
Yes, the emphasis.
The obsession, love of money and material wealth. Anger, resentment, or wrath that clouds the mind. Dejection, sadness, hopelessness, or sorrow.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the reason I would quickly say one of the reasons they kind of go with this one, especially the next one of listlessness and sloth, referring to apathy, restlessness, or boredom towards spiritual life duties. They look at these and saying, not that you shouldn't be sorrowful. Rowan points to those who mourn shall be comforted, saying that there are times. Some of the fathers have argued that those who kind of try to escape their pain or the struggles with fiction or elevating themselves by distracting thoughts, they say you are engaging in like a form of dejection and listlessness because you do not accept the fact that this is what you're doing. He said, and they're saying, look at what Jesus said. If you mourn, you will be comforted. Mourn over the fact of the things that you're going through. If you're struggling with something, mourn. If someone is lost to you or something was lost to you, mourn for that. Don't try to distract yourself because then you're just burying it and it's going to build up and it's going to bring about a passion that will bring destruction to you.
Didn't need to be called out today, but thank you. No, really, I did not need to be called out today, but thank you. Oh, that's great.
But yeah, their idea of like, I was kind of thinking like, I like kind of like developing fictions, not necessarily to distract, but just kind of like, sometimes the way I like try to like explain my thoughts. But they're saying, no, that's one of the reasons why they were able to explain like confession is so important. Is because if you're holding it within and you're now trying to distract yourself from that, it's not only you're not confessing it, but you're trying to distract yourself from it. You are building up this passion in you that is bringing you towards death and destruction. And they're saying, Jesus says to mourn. Therefore, just go to God and cry. Go confess and just express the issues here.
Did that recently.
The vainglory, the craving for praise, recognition, the approval of others, and then pride, the extreme elevation of the self. And what's interesting is that some of them will put pride at the beginning, saying it's the root that leads to the others, and some pride at the end, saying it's the ultimate culmination of the others.
Yeah, as you're reading that, it struck me, that's actually, you're talking about how it's Eastern. It's also very Catholic.
Like it's like the Catholics take the 7 deadly sins building off of that.
Right.
And so it starts Eastern, and then the West, more towards the Catholic, develop the 7 deadly sins off of the passions. And then the Anglican priest Rowan, he's like saying, look, this is why they're described these ways. The 7 deadly sins is built off this. Now he says the modern connotation is this, but it's rooted in this, which means all this stuff right here.
Yeah.
And they're saying that this is the stuff that leads, one of the things that leads towards sin. So if you go to another passage in Romans, it talks about there's been several places in the New Testament where it ties passion to sex specifically. So sexual passions, wrongful passions. But there is some spots where it talks about just a passion in general that is just destructive. Paul uses that, I think, in Romans 7 earlier, if I remember correctly, where he doesn't,
I got it pulled up.
It's not tied directly towards sex itself. I don't remember if that's actually Romans 7 or not.
He does communicate about sex at the beginning.
He does, but there's a spot where he uses, I can't remember if it was Romans 7 or somewhere else, where he just uses like a just idea of like this great passion.
For when we were in the realm of the flesh, the sinful passions aroused by the law were at work in us, that we bore fruit for our death.
Maybe that's the one.
That's the only use of the word passion in here.
Maybe.
That's verse 5.
And that's also depending on the translation, how they're translated.
Right.
The one they typically refer to as pathos, but there's obviously other ones that you can refer to that tie into it. Sorry to derail. That it's just those are the thoughts that immediately came to mind when you were talking about that. Because those are the things I've been trying to figure out is the relationship of sin to human, which kind of gets into original sin, which is not really the direction you're talking about right now. It's rooted in that, I would say, but it's not necessarily what you're getting at. It's just those are the first thoughts that came to mind. Is that clarification that sin is the willful act, in giving into a desire that is conceived from a temptation, which is as some of the early Eastern and then obviously Western who developed the seven deadly, but the idea of the passions.
Yeah, it's a crude analogy, or not analogy, but it's a crude example, and it's not really accurate. But it's the classic joke of you can look once, but it's a sin when you look twice. Right, like, no, right? Because if you look once and then you keep thinking about it, that's still sinful. And then if you look and you're staring, that's sinful too, right? But if you look once, you go, oh, she's pretty, and then you move on with your day. Nothing wrong with recognizing the beauty of God's creation.
But it's when you then let to dwell and you give it temptation, then it's a sin, and that's rooted in the passion. The reason they refer to as the passion is because the blameful and blameless is because it's a corruption of the blameless passions. So like gluttony is a corruption of the passion of to eat.
Yes.
The passion of lust is a corruption of the passion of sex and love. It's a derailing. It's a to use one of the Hebrew words for transgression. I think it's transgression, which refers to taking something and making it corrupt.
That makes sense, actually, right? Like to transgress in the literal sense of the word is to move.
Yeah.
As you're moving something out of its intended value.
One of the ones I tried to do for myself, and I've not been consistent with it, is especially when it comes to something that is very clearly impressed and talked about by God a lot, is saying I've taken something sacred and made it common. And it's there's also the idea of missing the mark with like I forget what it's called, hamartia, I think it is.
Yes,
or hamartia maybe is the better enunciation. But there's also the idea of like
if you wanted the nominative, it'd be automartios.
But it's the idea of but there's other words that play into not only missing the mark, but this taking and corrupting it, a darkening of. That's why Paul talks about like the darkening of the heart, because the heart is becoming corrupted. And that's why, too, what some people don't want to recognize, saying that sin must only mean that we're dead, because that's what Paul says, but it is also a sickness that Jesus outright calls in the gospel, saying it is a sickness. But sickness is, who was it? I think it was a Second Temple text, maybe it was Job. It was one of the two that talks about sickness almost like an offspring of death. And that sickness is a product of death, but it also is like cyclical. That death is a reason sickness is here, but also because it's talking about death as if it's like a person.
I know what you're talking about.
But sickness also brings you to death. I'm sorry, I'm derailing and talking so much right now.
No, that's all right.
This was like a thought you wanted to get to.
I'm fine to do a part 2. What time are we at?
9:53.
In the recording, dog.
43 minutes.
Okay. I have a watch and a clock sitting in front of me.
You said what time?
What recording time?
Okay. Anyways, I know you had more thoughts you probably wanted to get to. Those are the first thoughts that came to mind when you were sharing your stuff, and I was like, I feel like it needed to be clarified really quick, because James makes this so very clear that is a choice that is made in action. Which is super important in understanding that because it's a choice, that's the reason why Paul and Jesus, James, John, Peter, all the apostles, the entirety of the Tanakh, including, urges the reader to not sin. And it's not that, I love what you said months ago, because you corrected yourself, because you went to say, I can't help myself. No, I won't help myself.
Yeah.
And there was the question of, I don't know why I won't, but I keep doing it.
And that's exactly it, right? That's the, I do not do what I want to do, and what I want to do, I do not do, right? And Paul even says, we went over, he used that exact wording, do not understand it.
Yeah.
Right? I do not understand what I do. That's verse 15. I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do.
Yeah. It's
kind of a nice full circle.
I'm sure you had a ton more thoughts. If you want to keep, I would love to hear what your thoughts were from the past couple times.
That honestly,
I want to hold the direction.
I'm good with that. I think we can do a part 2 as well.
Could be in the car when we're driving, or in the hotel whenever we arrive.
Well, so we have to talk about that a little bit too.
All right.
I feel like that's a good.
You want to?
Yeah, no, we kind of went full circle, and I'm going to do a part 2 for this.
Well, I think
because I wrote down my thoughts so that way I literally cannot forget it. Because when I was doing this, I was like, I need to write this down because I know if I don't, I'm going to forget it, because I've done that 3 times now with topics that I wanted to talk about.
I think this ties relatively well with the previous conversations we've been having too. What we were going to pick up with next was going to be the resurrection and its place.
Yeah.
In the discussion of death and all these kind of things. But one thing that I remember saying when we first started that probably need to be discussed is sin and its relationship, which, to be fair, I don't know how much we're going to get into that, because I'm still trying to figure it out. And then you have to get into original sin and how that... I said this in our Discord. People have had numerous conversations. I said, here's the issue. Your conversation and your opinion is rooted in what you view to be original sin.
Right.
Everything else, and I'm not saying every theology stems from that, but this conversation all stems from that. And I'll argue a little more Gregory of Nazian and Basil and Nissa for a second. All of that is also rooted in the Trinity,
right,
and understanding of that, and which plays into your understanding of anthropology and Christology. Sorry, I talked so much.
No, that's okay. I wanted interaction, I wanted discussion, I wanted feedback, so I'm glad it kind of moved in that direction, and maybe we'll, God willing, next time talk about some of the other things.
Yeah, I would love to hear the things you've been chewing on.
Specifically, what was kind of tripping me up was the released from the law. That was interesting, but we'll save that for another time.
Okay,
we could go on probably for a couple hours about that.
I mean, I'm willing to. I'm fine to.
I have work in the morning.
That's too bad for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it there.
Okay.